Oh, my goodness, my gavel, I thought I lost, okay, there we go. I call the March 6th meeting of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement to order. A quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from February 27th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Senator Frentz moves approval of the February 27th, 2023 meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the minutes from February 27th, 2023 are adopted. Our first item on the agenda is to hear from testifiers that we ran out of time to hear last week's meeting about benefit improvements for teacher. I will note that because many of our members had to leave during the teacher's testimony, I would like to encourage everyone to review the powerful words from last week. We have also received numerous resources related to teacher benefit improvements, and I would encourage everyone to visit the LCPR website to read and become familiar with the over 70 submitted letters and resources. I will now turn it over to our two final testifiers, so please keep your testimony under 5 minutes. If you can make your way up to the table, we have Lonnie Duberstein, is that correct? And then Joan Beaver. So please, you can both just take a seat up there and you can begin when you are ready.
Chair Herr, is this on now?
It is on,
Okay.
yes.
Chair Herr, Commission members, thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Retired Educators Association of Minnesota and its nearly 8,000 members. I am Lonnie Duberstein, past president and co-chair of the Legislative Committee, along with Tim Moynihan over there and Henry Carboni. Public employees have done and continue to do the vital work of the state for a modest income and the promise of an adequate, secure retirement. The LCPR's guidebook, Principles of Pension Policy, states its purpose. Minnesota public pension plans should play their appropriate role in providing financial security to public employees in retirement. It further states that retirement benefits should be increased during the period of retirement to offset the impact of economic inflation over time. 500,000 Minnesotans rely on that promised earned benefit, including the COLA increases, to help maintain an adequate income. A mandate from the 2018 Omnibus Pension Bill required an in-depth study of the COLA. The LCPR study found the purpose of Minnesota's post-retirement adjustments is to mitigate the decline in the value of a fixed monthly payment due to inflation. However, that expressed purpose of COLAs has not fully benefited Minnesota's retirees. The COLA study further reported purchasing power has been steadily decreasing. It also stated, for the statewide plans, it is unlikely that the post-retirement adjustments will fully cover retirees' loss of purchasing power, and retirees will experience an erosion of their benefits purchasing power. In May of 2018, Minnesota's legislators and governor made very positive national news headlines because of their bipartisan cooperation in unanimously passing the 2018 Public Pension Bill. I was honored to speak at the Capitol Rotunda at Governor Dayton's last bill signing. The 2018 LCPR deserves recognition for its part in that historic legislation. That shared sacrifice collaboration strengthened Minnesota's bond rating for the benefit of all of its citizens. Unfortunately, that necessary legislation was mainly paid for by retirees. An already inadequate COLA was cut in half and frozen for 5 years. It will take another 5 years to reach 75% of the 2018 COLA. Retirees currently see no end to their 2018 shared sacrifice schedule. With Minnesota's projected massive budget surplus and increasing inflation, it is time to change that schedule. It is time to invest in the public employees of Minnesota. Now more than ever, it is time to acknowledge and reward the sacrifices still being made by retirees for their support of that 2018 pension bill. The work done by the Commission is vital and dramatically affects Minnesotans from every legislative district in the state. Retirees depend on you to keep the promises made. Thank you, Commission members, and as we all would like to, live long and prosper.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Bless you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And please identify yourself for the record and then begin your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Joan Beaver. One second. I represent Education Minnesota Retired. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I was happy to wait, and I'm glad that you allowed the active teachers to take the time last week. On behalf of our members who received benefits from TRA and PERA, I retired in 2010 from Stillwater Area High School after 37 years of teaching mostly U.S. history, and I served on the Education Minnesota Pension Task Force last year. Education Minnesota Retired strongly supports proposals that would enable active educators to retire earlier than the current normal age of retirement of 66 without penalty. And we ask that you would please remember the needs of those who retired with a promise of a pension benefit that would maintain its value. For the past 2 decades, Education Minnesota Retired has worked for the stability and future viability of the teacher pension system, along with the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirements. Public pensions are deferred compensation that contribute to the retention of teachers by offering a secure retirement. Furthermore, a stable income for retired teachers is good for the economy of Minnesota. As Mr. Duberstein mentioned, the benefits of these pensions are spread out throughout every community in the state. For these reasons, in order to shore up the sufficiency of the funds, retired members supported the changes made in 2010 and again in 2018, in spite of less than adequate post-retirement adjustments, including a freeze in 2011 and 2012. Even when inflation rates were running at 2.5% or lower, these adjustments did not keep up with inflation. I would strongly encourage all new commissioners to read and returning commissioners to review the COLA study that was ordered in the 2018 pension bill and completed by LCPR staff in 2020. I would draw your attention to figures 13 and 14 on page 32 of the report that illustrate the projected decrease in the purchasing power of benefits for those who retired in 2011 and 2021, with an assumed inflation rate of 2.5%. If you look at these graphs, you will understand why our retired members would be in need of a greater post-retirement adjustment this year, even if inflation had remained steady at around 2.5%. The graphs illustrate the extent of the sacrifice that retired members made in supporting the 2018 bill. And now, with the unforeseen inflation rates of approximately 7% each of the last 2 years, the need for improvement is critical. The current COLA rate of 1% for TRA and 1.5% for PERA is threatening the current purchasing power of pension benefits and will have a dramatic compounding effect even if inflation rates decrease soon. And decreased spending by retirees will have a negative impact on economic stability in communities throughout the state, as well as greater reliance on state resources by our retirees when the benefits they counted on have much less value. The 2020 COLA study also reminded the Commission of its principles. One is that the value of pension benefits granted at retirement should be maintained, and that the cost of maintaining that value should be funded by the state rather than the pension funds. I strongly encourage the Commission to fulfill this principle. Tying the post-retirement adjustment to the cost of living as House File 2222 and Senate File 1938 do is in line with this principle. I'm afraid that the TRA proposal, while it might be a start in the right direction, is not nearly adequate. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And those conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Beaver. And thank you both for your willingness to come this week instead of last. We appreciate the accommodation, and we thank you for the testimony today.
Happy to do that.
Yes, thank you.
Our next item of business is to hear from the Minnesota Management and Budget Office related to the governor's budget proposal for our public pension. Welcome to the commission. We will keep presentations and questions to 15 minutes so that we can get to our bill at the end of this meeting. So I will be timing the 15 minutes just so that I can stay on track. So if you're ready, go ahead and introduce yourself and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. For the record, my name is Thomas Carr, and I'm an Executive Budget Officer at Minnesota Management and Budget. Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the governor's budget recommendation related to pensions. Governor Walz included $78 million in his proposed budget to provide a one-time, non-compounded cost of living adjustment for beneficiaries in public pension plans, including the Minnesota State Retirement System, or MSRS, Teachers Retirement Association, or TRA, Public Employees Retirement Association, or PERA, and the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association. This funding is intended to respond to inflationary pressures by providing a one-time increase of 2.5% to benefits paid in calendar year 2024. Under current law, most but not all beneficiaries in these plans will receive a 1% or a 1.5% cost of living adjustment. Under this proposal, these public plan beneficiaries would receive a 2.5% cost of living adjustment in calendar year 24. The cost of living adjustments that beneficiaries are set to receive under current law vary by plan. For example, beneficiaries in the MSRS State Patrol Plan are set to receive a 1% cost of living adjustment next calendar year, whereas beneficiaries in the MSRS General Plan are set to receive a 1.5% cost of living adjustment. This recommendation would provide a uniform 2.5% cost of living adjustment to all of these beneficiaries, irrespective of their plan. Approximately 255,000 individuals would benefit from this increase. In terms of implementation, the increase may be distributed at the discretion of each retirement fund as either a lump sum payment or as an increase to the monthly benefit amounts. Benefit payments in calendar year 2025 would then revert back to what they would otherwise be under current law, hence non-compounded. Thank you again for the opportunity to present today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there also a Brian Dahl that will be presenting or asking or responding to questions, or is it just going to be you today?
It would just be me today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members, I will open it up to questions if you have any questions for our presenter. If not, I have a question.
Madam
So
Chair.
a COLA increase is, our retired members will get a benefit. Was there consideration for the active members of plans and in the governor's proposal? If you could talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, so I'm not, Madam Chair, I'm not here to speak of the exactly the process the governor decided to make this increase. I would just say that this is consistent with what the governor recommended last year, which was strictly the post-retirement adjustment and not increases to benefits for active teachers or changes to contribution rates or anything like that.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand that for the record. And then the other question is that the governor's budget, he did a simple 2.5%, and I know the plans are proposing a compounded COLA. And so if you could maybe just talk a little bit to the difference of what your proposal is compared to theirs, and what does it mean to be simple versus compound?
Sure, Madam Chair. So as you mentioned, this would be a non-compounded increase. So in effect, individual or beneficiaries or retirees would receive this benefit in calendar year 2024, and then the benefit of that, the amount of the increase could be a lump sum payment, or it could be an increase to those benefits. But then after calendar year 24, so beginning calendar year 25, benefits would revert back to what they would otherwise be under current law. And the way you could also think about this is that this is a one-time general fund investment that would be in fiscal year 24, and there would be no changes to contribution rates for those for active members or anything. And then there would be no general fund impact in fiscal years 25 onward.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative O'Driscoll.
You know I would have one, right, Madam Chair?
I just had to start it, I know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the testifier, when we look at things here in the Pension Commission, we try to look at all three legs of the stool. And one of the legs of the stool that we are looking at that's very challenging right now is what to do with benefits and keeping those programs funded for future retirees. Number one, does the governor have a plan to submit or an idea to submit to the legislature and to the commission for consideration? And number two, is there going to be a supplemental or a codicil to the governor's budget that's coming forward that might include some additional thought on those topics? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Carr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative O'Driscoll. This is the totality of the governor's recommendation as of his proposed budget for this year. It's yet to be seen if if a potential revised budget would include something else, but for now it just includes the one-time adjustment for calendar year 24.
Follow-up, Representative O'Driscoll?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I would strongly encourage the governor and the administration to join us in a partnership in looking to resolve these issues. They are not just a one-time situation that we're addressing. It's an ongoing issue that we need to be looking at. And so look forward to the governor's participation and your encouragement of the governor to participate in the process with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. We are moving much quicker than I had anticipated. So our next item of business will be to hear from the pension fund directors on their funding proposal. Now that the February forecast has been released and the two legislative chambers are making their budget plans, this is an opportunity for plan directors to make their ask. After our plan directors make their presentation, we will move to public testimony on each proposal. I will advise each of the plan directors to keep their presentation to around 7 minutes with a little bit of leeway because we gained some time. So please make your way up to the testifiers table. I think the first person we have is Aaron Leonard. Identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Well, I'm not seeing the HDMI cable, so I will just go from the paper.
I'm feeling generous.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Erin Leonard. I'm the Executive Director of MSRS. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. So just to give you a little background, the board has not taken a formal position yet on these proposals. These are suggestions or ideas that are coming from me. They don't have a formal position. We will be discussing this at our March 16th meeting. And I thought it'd be helpful just to remind everyone who administers or which plans MSRS administers and for which members. So we have 5 traditional defined benefit pension plans that we administer for all state employees. So it's a combination of our general plan, correctional, state patrol, judges, and legislators. When coming up with these suggestions, a few things I kept in mind. So the appropriation, whatever there might be for pensions, should be distributed in some way based on the liabilities or the membership of the plans. So in MSRS's case, we have about 17% of total membership and about 20% of the liabilities of the public pension plans in Minnesota. I also started with concepts that have been discussed in the past, so these aren't new ideas. These are things that we've talked about in prior years. Everything includes an assumed rate of return of 7% because that is our board's position to move to 7%. I did connect with some stakeholders to get their thoughts on things that may be beneficial to them. I did favor one-time appropriations when discussing these suggestions because I know the surplus, a lot of it is the one-time dollars. I also considered the impact on smaller plans. So one-time cash infusions have a much larger impact to our smaller retirement plans than they do the large ones. For example, a $10 million infusion to our state patrol plan accounts for about an increased funded ratio of 1%. $10 million to our general plan, which is about $16 billion, you wouldn't even notice it in the overall funding of the plan. Included providing inflation relief to both active and retired members. Also included the governor's recommendation for COLA increases with some potential different increases for state patrol plan because of the COLA study mentioned in prior testimony. Some modest benefit changes, assuming they're fully funded or absorbed by the plan. We'll note when that's the case. And then in addition, I also kept in mind recruitment and retention challenges that are being faced by our public safety plans, specifically State Patrol and Correctional in the MSRS case. So when you have 5 plans, trying to summarize these things can be challenging. So a quick summary slide on where we're at. So our total membership, our large plan is 126,555 plan members. Our funded ratio, the general plan is very well funded. We're almost 93%, even assuming a 7% rate of return. And then our board's position is to move that rate of return to 7% without additional funding to cover that. So we are voluntarily, I guess, or requesting increases of our liabilities to make sure we're valuing our liabilities correctly for the future. So our general plan suggestions would include anything that's discussed on this slide would include active members of both the general and unclassified plan because they are linked as far as contributions go. And then any changes to post-retirement increases in the general plan impact both the unclassified and legislators plan as well because those are also linked in statute. So we would recommend removing the delay in the COLA for individuals who retire early. So in the 2018 bill, there was a provision that added if individuals retired prior to age 66, they would not receive a cost of living adjustment until they reach age 66. That's an actuarial reduction, so there really isn't a cost to the plan necessarily. And so that is something we could absorb as a plan. Proposing reducing employee contributions to provide inflation relief to our active members. A 0.5% increase, so their contributions would go from 6 to 5.5%, and offsetting that by increasing the employer contribution by that same amount. That would be an ongoing cost of $17.7 million. A COLA increase for this plan would be the governor's recommendation as just discussed. So the one-time dollars for that COLA increase from the governor's request is $15.13 million, and then the ongoing would be $17.7 million. The correctional plan is our next plan. Prior to 2010, this plan had one multiplier for everyone in the plan. So everyone received 2.4% per year of service. In 2010, this plan made some modifications and created a second tier. So new hires have a 2.2% multiplier. We would propose increasing that multiplier prospectively for everyone to 2.4%. So then everyone working side by side would have the same multiplier. Now this 13-year period in which they may have received a lower multiplier, that doesn't change that, it just is all prospective. That would be $8.8 million on a one-time basis, and then we would propose increasing the supplemental contributions to this plan by 1.6% to cover that change as well as the deficiency that exists in the plan today. So that would be about $4.7 million on an ongoing basis. The additional item that we would ask for consideration for the correctional plan and state patrol plan is to modify the sunset dates for the ongoing funding. So right now, once those plans reach 100% funded or 2048, whichever comes sooner, that funding goes away. And it's a one and done sort of situation. And so we would propose extending that to a longer period of time from a funding perspective. So the ask for this plan would be 9.7 million one time, 4.7 million ongoing. For the state patrol plan, as mentioned during prior testimony, the state patrol plan does not pay into Social Security. So these members, this is their primary pension. And they don't have that additional Social Security where they have that inflation component from a COLA. And then retiree increases in this plan have been at 1% since 2014. So they've been receiving a 1% fixed compounded COLA of 1% since that date. The request for this plan would be the extension of that supplemental contribution appropriation, potentially a one-time appropriation to cover recent duty disability losses. So this plan has experienced higher than expected duty disability rates since 2019. So we would request a one-time cash infusion. I suggested $10 million. And then this is where there's a couple different options as far as the post-retirement increase or COLA. For this plan, if you increase the cost of living adjustment beginning 2024 to 1.25% fixed compounding, it is a $2.8 million ongoing cost and a $30 million increase to the actuarial accrued liabilities or one-time cost. So it's a pretty big, it's an example of how much COLAs can be quite expensive, especially if they're compounded. The alternative option would be to go with the governor's recommendation of that one-time 2.5%. So it's either 11 million to 40 million one time, but a $2.8 million ongoing to cover the cost of that increased COLA. For our judges plan, this plan, the funded ratio isn't as strong because it didn't start being pre-funded in 2000 until 1992. This plan also established a lower tier of benefits in 2013. So this, we would recommend a one-time cash infusion to help offset some of the losses, the move to 7%, and just because it makes a pretty big impact. A $9.3 million one-time with the COLA of the governor's recommendation. So this page is a summary of the changes. The total ask would be $45.13 million to $75.13 million one-time dollars, and $22 to $25 million ongoing. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's reference materials in your packet that's just really giving you the funded status of today. And then on this slide in particular, this shows post-retirement increases, kind of the overview, the history, as well as what the cost would be for ongoing compounded increases. So you have that for your reference.
Thank you, Ms. Lennon. I'm going to have members hold questions until all four plans present. So if Doug Anderson is ready, if you can make your way up to the testifier's table and identify yourself and then begin your testimony.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commission members. I hope to take advantage of a little bit of the leeway of the 7 minutes, but I'll try not to abuse it. The presentation that I'm putting, I labeled it benefit changes and funding proposal because that's what's on the agenda. I'd maybe say this is more of a suggestion. It does not represent an official board position. It is consistent with some of the long-standing board positions about trying to not favor certain members over others, and also a board favor position of making sure that any benefit changes come with full funding. You're going to hear a lot of different proposals today from the funds. I think where the para proposal or suggestion is a little different is that we're not proposing any additional employee contribution or employer contribution or ongoing state funding. We're just talking about what I, as an executive director, would be recommending to the para board if we were given an allocation and one-time money to work with. So first, I'd like to talk about how we would recommend the pension funding target be allocated. And I think there's a measurement that would work very well for how this could be allocated, not just to the different funds, but to all the different plans and to all the different members. An active member's productivity is directly tied to their compensation. Benefits are a form of compensation, and the actual accrued liability is the amount of a member's compensation not yet paid to them for their past service. So I had a visual that is not popping up on the screen. Thank you, Aaron. Okay. Well, I'll continue just talking through is that we think that allocating the pension funding target in proportion to the actual accrued liability would be fair, and the result is that about 45% of that total would come to para. So this just represents how we would see the productivity creates the surplus, the pension funding target is part of the surplus, it comes back to the funds to share, and if it's allocated in proportion to a member's past service, it would be about 45% coming back to para members. And then para would have the challenge of determining whether to allocate that evenly to plan members or to prioritize certain issues. And we've heard a lot about the issues, and the para members have all the same issues. Retirees are struggling with inflation protection. A lot of the active members, particularly the more experienced active members, are concerned about when they can retire. We have a lot of members, various types of members, some with very challenging jobs. We've had two different groups approach us about this, the 911 telecommunicators, talking about concern about the late normal retirement age, as well as parole officers, and I'm sure there's many others within our group. We have a very diverse group of membership. And then the younger active employees can talk about their highest contribution rates in the history of the plan and what that means for them. It is a fact for the para general plan and for the para police and fire plan that every generation has fared worse than the generation before them. They've had to contribute higher rates, they've had later retirements, and less inflation protection than the groups before them, and that's a trend we'd like to see reversed. So all these issues, for para to fix all of those issues and get to where we want to be, would cost at least, well, about 7 or 8 billion to get the plans fully funded, and then to increase benefits, maybe 5 billion more. We're well over $10 billion to fix this to where we want to go. We know that can't be done right away. We just want to find a way to make progress towards kind of changing that trend. Para's longstanding position is to try to make sure that no groups are favored. So we would look for a way, is there a way that we can allocate this evenly to all? And we would point to that, how can you use that actuarial accrued liability, the value of someone's pension, and use that to do something for retirees and active members who are future retirees. So we look at, well, how do we measure where we're at? Well, first we have to make sure we're measuring it with good assumptions, and we're not. We've been told for 3 years in a row that we have an unreasonable assumption. I report that as kind of a fail for our plans that we hope to correct. We measure the funding status by not just the current funding ratio, but where the plan is headed. You know, our plan with the best funding ratio it's going to decline. That's the expectation, it's going to decline, and our plan with the worst funding ratio is expected to improve. So you can't just look at the current funding ratio, but all of our plans are in a little bit of trouble with that. We measure the contributions if they're appropriate. The goal is that the employee and employer contribution should equal the normal cost. That's where we need to be, and we want better inflation protection for our retirees. We will achieve intergenerational equity when the contributions equal the normal cost and retirees are better tied to inflation. And steps that we can do to get there is to work on that post-retirement or the COLA formula for retirees. Now, this is not just impacting today's retirees, it's also to impact future retirees. And back in 2018, Para advocated and legislature agreed to change the formula for 2 of our plans to tie it to inflation as much as could be afforded to do so. So the formula was put in place with the intention to kind of create these dials that can be turned up when it's affordable to do so. And now 5 years later, I see this is an opportunity to try to turn those dials a little bit. And maybe it's just a little bit now, but it's a potential first step and a precedent that can be set for trying to adjust that going forward in the future. So our goal would be tie it to inflation, maybe a 0% minimum, and maybe there's a maximum just to protect the plan. That's the goal. The correctional plan is close to being there. General plan is a way to go, and the police and fire plan has further to go. And we understand there's no immediate gratification to this. These are retirement plans. We're trying to improve the retirement security of these members, no matter what their current age is, and this is the way that we believe we could do it. So if the allocation formula were as recommended, and if the pension funding target was $500 million, I'm just picking a number, I don't know what it is, but that would give Paris some money to work with, and we really couldn't get too far in these formulas. It would help, it's a step, it's a precedent, it's where we want to start going forward, and if there were recurring money, we could do much more with it. And I'll end with another option would be to kind of build on the governor's proposal and to put something in place where that can be repeated in the future. So if there's money available, put it in the fund and create another formula tied to inflation. So if inflation is high in the future, there will be a one-time increase happening that year. And we don't know exactly what that numbers would be. We need some help from the actuaries to help figure that out. But it's just trying to tie to inflation, trying to provide that protection for future members as well. And then, does this help with our scorecards? A little bit. It's increasing benefits by approximately 0.5% of a member's value, whether they're retired or active. So there's something in what we're proposing for the actives. And it does tie it to inflation. You would be able to say that you've helped improve the benefit security for over 400,000 members. That's something PARA can offer that others can't, that kind of number. And it'd be a step in the right direction. And I'll hold for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Up next, we will have Philip Tenchik. Oh, is it Jay? Are we having Jay Stoffel first? All right, Jay Stoffel, we'll have you go ahead. Or is it? No, you're right. Oh. Phil, apparently I was right the first time. You're supposed to go next. Yeah, you go next. Because Jay got to go last week a bit, and I just want to make sure he just goes over the actual proposal this time. Oh, that's okay, sorry. Okay. Please identify yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Herr. Members of the Commission, I'm Phil Tensick, the Executive Director and CIO for St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony this morning. I think with the same caveats that our previous presenters have had, that we've not formally presented these suggestions to the board, but as a plan, we do have some legislative objectives. So when we looked at our legislative package this year, we tried to be very, very rational, step back and look at areas for improvement, and then why those areas exist. And what we found was that the first area for improvement was to meet parity with the other Minnesota pension plans. There was 2 areas where we feel we've fallen behind, annual increases to retirees, and then a funding shortfall from prior unfunded contributions. Once that objective is met, that's when we feel the opportunity to improve benefits can take place. And the 2 objectives there would be to allow active plan members to retire earlier and to provide additional inflation relief for our retirees. So how we were able to determine that there is a lack of parity with other plans. So currently, St. Paul teachers have the lowest annual increase. Additionally, it's lower than other teachers that are in TRA, and those teachers have a path to a 1.5% annual increase. We are at 1 now, 1 going forward. Additionally, this lack of parity has existed in the past, so it's not just a current issue. A St. Paul teacher, they were retired in 2003, is only receiving 74.3% of the benefit they received when they retired, inflation adjusted. Compare that to the green line, that's other teachers, while they're receiving less, they're at 82%. So they've seen an 18% increase for other teachers. St. Paul teachers have seen a more than 25% decrease. The funding, lack of parity, our famous red box from prior unfunded contributions compounds to $338 million. And again, the impact of that prior unfunding has us at the lowest funded rate of any of the Minnesota plans. We're at 68.7 compared to our peers. The next lowest is at 78.5%. The other teachers are at 81. If we had funded that red box, we would be at 83% valuation. So we would be at parity with the other plans. I think the best way to approach that inequality would be funding the 7.5% to 7% return assumption change. Otherwise, we're going to essentially be making a new red box, the delta between the green line and the purple line. So funding of $97.6 million today would close that future red box and not compound prior unfunding. So looking at those areas that set our objectives, we were able to come up with some legislative options that would address them. And again, we think parity is the most important part. If we don't address prior inequalities, they will only be compounded with a pari passu division of any additional funding this year. So once we achieve parity, then we believe we can start providing benefit enhancements for all of the plans. The relative advantage of being a smaller plan is that we can make large impacts with smaller dollars. So addressing those two parity issues cost less than $100 million. Do realize that a target has not been set, but it's likely that we could address at least one of these parity issues and still have meaningful funds available to provide benefit increases for all of the plans. Additionally, as a smaller plan, we were able to, I think, look pretty comprehensively and provide a number of options. So to address our active members, we've provided two proposals to decrease the retirement age or decrease the penalties, and then also provided the cost for further increases to address the higher inflation. And so in conclusion, I would say, once again, that it's important to address the parity and not compound prior inequalities by making a division purely on a pari passu basis. With that, I conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Tensick. Next, we will have Jay Stoffel. And I know, Mr. Stoffel, you'd had a little bit of a chance to go over your presentation last week, so maybe if you want to just move us into the actual recommendations, that would be really great on time saving for us. And when you're ready, please identify yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Jay Stoffel, Executive Director of Teachers Retirement Association. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you for, again, hearing the TRA board proposal. I'd like to give you an idea about the scope of the issue before us. There are 84,000 working public school educators in Minnesota. 80,000 of them, or 95% of our working members, were hired after June 30, 1989, and are in our Tier 2 plan. This group is now approaching retirement age, and they are learning that they must work to age 66 to be eligible for full benefits. They have no rule of 90. We have heard from hundreds of them that full retirement benefits are simply not achievable. Many have said if they did work to age 66, it would be at a time when their productivity and effectiveness is diminished. Much of the discussion has been about improving the pension plan in order to attract and retain great teachers. Another aspect to consider is how a pension plan can be designed to help with the out-transition of employees at the normal end of their career. Age 66 normal retirement age is an outlier in teacher pension plans across the country and makes Minnesota less competitive. It should be lowered. As noted last week, we have also heard from the retirees. COLAs on the TRA benefits in each of the last 5 years have been 1%. However, recent inflation has been high and our retirees are losing purchasing power. TRA board proposal before you would provide the following. For active teachers, allow full benefits for teachers who are at least age 60 and have earned at least 30 years of service credit. For retirees, a one-time 2.5% COLA compounded on January 1, 2024. The investment return assumption would be lowered from 7.5% to 7%, and the date to amortize or unfunded liability would be extended from June 30, 2048 to 2053. Finally, an increase in the required contribution rate would be borne 25% by the employee and 75% by the employer, funded by the state of Minnesota. So the next page. So the dollars behind this proposal are on the second page of my presentation. So we have it broken down between one-time costs and ongoing costs. So in the middle of the page, we outline our funding proposal in terms of the one-year cost, And we're suggesting that to cover the cost of the 2.5% cost of living adjustment, that would take $316 million, a one-time cash payment to the fund of $316 million. And then the ongoing cost for the new 60 and 30 benefit improvement would be $153 million. So in total, the first year cost would be $469 million. After that, the ongoing cost, and it's broken out between the employee and the employer, again, 25% of the benefit improvement would be paid for by the employee. So currently, soon, our employee contribution rate will be 7.75%. So this would add 0.87% to that amount for our new employee contribution rate of 8.62. On the employer side, the employer contribution rate will soon be going to 8.75%. This would add another 2.6% to that to get to 11.35%. And this is all as a percentage of our covered payroll. That employer additional contribution would bring in $153 million every year for 30 years. But that would need to be increased by 3% a year because we assume that our covered payroll is growing by 3% a year. On average, that's what teachers are receiving in salary increases every year. And in addition, the higher employer contribution rate would be funded by the state through a pension adjustment in the general education aid formula, similar to what was done in 2018. So the TRA board had a special meeting 2 weeks ago. They have reaffirmed this plan, but they also agreed to consider other ideas that would lower the normal retirement age. So we're open to that discussion. In closing, I will tell you that the TRA board has deliberated over this for the last 7 months. They are the fiduciaries of the plan. By Minnesota statute, they owe a duty to the members and retirees of the plan, to the taxpayers of the state, and to the state of Minnesota. This is their proposal, and we would appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. I'm going to open this up now to our testifiers, and then if we had questions, we can ask at that time. If members are okay with that, hold your question until the testifiers. We just have a few of them. So I'm going to actually call our first testifier for MSRS, Ethan Vogel.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Vogel. Identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Commission members, my name is Ethan Vogel, Legislative Director for AFSCME Council 5. AFSCME stands for the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. As you can imagine from our name, a large group of our constituency, our members, are state employees. They're participants in the MSRS General Plan and the Correctional Plan. And then we also represent the next largest group would be in Para General with county and city employees. We've also got smaller groups of members in other plans, but those are the big ones. And so I'm just going to provide some high-level feedback, and I guess we'll start with how any available funding should be distributed in our eyes. So equitable distribution would, to us, mean I guess it makes a lot of sense to base it off of the actuarially accrued liability. That's what we would support. We could also go by overall members, but the accrued liability makes a lot of sense to us. To the extent possible, we would like to see benefits should be used to help everyone. You know, the impact of inflation is being felt by active members just as much as it is retirees, and so helping active members and retirees all at the same time is what we would hope to see. You might ask, well, can't active members just go and negotiate their next contract and get wage increases to best reflect inflation? Well, that might be true, and we hope that that will be the case, especially for the state after this appropriation and our contracts coming up. You know, active members are already, as you heard Doug state, contributing a whole lot more for the benefits that they're being promised. And so, you know, if the actuarial cost of the promised benefit is around 8% for parageneral, and the employees are contributing 6.5%. Of the 7.5% that the employer groups are contributing, really the majority is going to make up the unfunded liability, not for our actual benefits. So it just doesn't seem fair that we would focus on one group over the other. And we agree that COLAs right now are far, far too low. And the statutory COLAs do not protect the original purchasing power, but the retirees that you're hearing from likely enjoyed the benefit of retiring at age 60 or 62 or 63 or 65. So they've got anywhere from 12 to 72 months additional benefits that they've already drawn that our active members will never see. So across all plans, and what you've probably heard from everyone, the common theme is we need a lot more money in the pension plans. And we hope that the target that you all arrive at is robust. And one shared position of the Public Employee Pension Coalition would be to eliminate any sunsets or phase outs of supplemental state aid that may be tied to either a funding date or a full funding ratio. That would be one small thing you could do to increase state aids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vogel. And it looks like you are also testifying for para. Is it same testimony or different?
Same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. After Mr. Vogel will be Brian Rice. And I would just encourage members, actually, we did get a lot of written testimony from people who wanted to share their thoughts. We actually have 2 books that we compiled that have that testimony. There was a lot, and I wanted to make sure that, we all got a chance to look at that. And there's actually copies out for those in the public to also look at as well. But it is also posted on our website, so if you could take a look at those, it is really valuable input. Senator Pappas?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask about the website.
Yep, it is. It is also on the website. Thank you. Mr. Rice, if you're ready, please identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Brian Rice. I'm an attorney in Minneapolis. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Minnesota Police Fraternal Association. That's a group of 940 retired police officers and their surviving spouses. I'm also offering testimony on behalf of the Minnesota Professional Firefighters. Scott Badness is in Washington, D.C. today. The firefighters are a group of 46 locals from throughout the state of Minnesota, representing 2,000 firefighters who are, all of these members are either active employees covered by the Para-Police and Fire Fund, or they're retirees. There's one chart I'm going to refer to in your packet. It's a green page. It comes from a COLA study that was done a few years back by the Pension Commission. Chad Burkhardt did a great job on this. I'm going to be referring to this. Our testimony deals with inflation, and this is a chart that wound up being included in the report for police and fire. This was starting in before we had the inflation hit that we're going through now, and it showed that the PRA police and fire members would see a over 25% diminution in the value of their pensions over the next 20 years. So what you could simply do is draw a big line of the 14% inflation that we've had the last 2 years and drop that number down. So we're probably at about 60% over the next 20 years. If nothing changes, the people that retired in the last 2 years are going to be greatly reduced from this plan. And I would submit, Madam Chair, and to members of the Pension Commission, this legislature owes a special obligation to these police and fire members and about teachers hired before 1978 in Minneapolis and St. Paul, teachers and TRA before 69, and city workers for this reason. They are not covered by Social Security. So the Social Security increases in the last 2 years that match that 14% increase, they don't have it. They had 1%. And the reason they're not in Social Security is by the laws of the state of Minnesota. So I really do believe those basic plan employees, they're being hurt greatly. One of the reforms that could be done, and it was alluded to by others, if you retire now as a firefighter, you don't get a raise for 3 years, up to 3 years. So you get to sit through this massive inflationary increase and see nothing added to your pensions. So COLAs are important. I would say this too, I know my time is limited. There's been some talk about $500 million on pensions. 5 years ago, when the Pension Commission came up with a bill, there was a spreadsheet out that did a present value, and the present value showed that the state was putting in $2 billion to help the pension fund, and the employees took a $6 billion reduction in benefits or contribution increases. So 500 million sounds like a lot of money. On a present value, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. That's a $50 million present value contribution to these pensions. And we're talking about a $100 billion pension system. The pension bill that was proposed last year that this commission voted for, that a majority of you were on, was $170 million a year. It had a present value of $1.7 billion. And literally, that moved the needle a little bit. It did some good things, but we're not talking millions on pensions. We're talking billions. You've heard that from other testifiers. And we know there's a battle going on about targets and things like that. But this is major pension issues. And you've got to look at it long-term, and the commitment has to be real and it has to be substantial. And the employees that I represented, we would never have made that deal 5 years ago knowing what inflation did. It was a mistake, but hindsight's always 20/20, right? Agreeing to a 3-year wait on a COLA when inflation, when you're walking into a storm, it's like saying, let's go out in the shorts and flip-flops and cross the street today and go across University Avenue. You wouldn't do it if you knew the storm was there. And
If you could wrap up your testimony, Mr. Rice.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Lori Burgesson, and after that is Eugene Washbush. And please identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Madam Chair, Herr, and members of the Pension Commission, my name is Lori Borgeson, and I'm a math teacher at Johnson High School. I would first like to acknowledge the testimony of many of my counterparts around the state. I agree that teaching now does not look anything like our Tier 1 counterparts. St. Paul and the state of Minnesota will not be a destination for education if we can't attract and retain teachers. This can't be done if we remain 46th in the nation on pension spending. Having a pension where teachers are rewarded for their service to the thousands of students we teach is not only beneficial, but it's the right thing to do. How do we attract potential teachers? There are many things that need to be done outside of pensions, but having fully funded pensions with a reasonable off-ramp at the end of one's career is a good start. There will still be people that choose to teach, knowing the current challenges in education. To many of us, it's a calling. How do we retain mid-career teachers? One of my biggest motivators is having a choice. Will I stay until I'm eligible for retirement? At 27 years in, yes, I can see the finish line. Many of my mid-career colleagues feel like making it to age 66 is a marathon. They're only halfway done and they're already exhausted. Moving the finish line closer helps them stay in the race, and it does not add to the current teacher shortage. It takes a special kind of person to choose the path of public service. These individuals are the human infrastructure of our state. Your decision to fund and provide a penalty-free retirement option prior to age 66 sends a message directly to our current teachers and our future generation of teachers. The state of Minnesota values your work. For your career of service, we will provide you with a good pension for the remainder of your days. Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, right on time, teacher's time. Good job. All right, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Gene Washbush. I'm a retired member of St. Paul Teacher Retirement Fund. And I'm speaking, about the post-retirement increases that have been awarded to the retirees in the past. Now, we're talking in St. Paul and actually statewide for other plans too. We're talking about career employees. We're talking about career teachers who taught for 30 to 40 years. And they were, as the Pension Commission standards are, they were given a reasonable retirement based upon their years of service and their service to the state of Minnesota and to the city of St. Paul. The post-retirement increases have not kept up with the increases in inflation. And we've talked about that quite a few times today already. The retired teachers in St. Paul, as Mr. Tensick said earlier, have not kept up with inflation. The example he used was that if you retired in 2003 until now, you have seen a decrease in your purchasing power of about 25% in 20 years. That has very definitely impacted the lifestyle of our retirees, especially those who are getting older, excuse me, and who have retired well before 2003. And as Brian Rice mentioned earlier, these members, many of them do not have Social Security. They only have their teacher pension plan. So if there are no increases from Social Security, there's no increases from the teacher pension plan, or very minimal ones from the pension plan, they are definitely experiencing a downturn in their purchasing power and therefore their standard of living. So I'm here today to request that you seriously consider improving or changing the method for post-retirement increases for the teachers in St. Paul and indeed statewide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Washbush and Ms. Borgerson. Next up, our last person who signed up ahead of time is Louis Sundin to speak on the TRA proposal. And please identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Louise Sundin, representing the 8,000 active and retired Minneapolis Public Schools educators. I'm here to express our support for the TRA bill and lately in support also of Senate File 1938 and House File 2222, the Education Minnesota bills as well. Whatever your final bill, we'd like to take these considerations under advisement, because some of them are unique to Minneapolis and St. Paul educators. I'd like to remind both new and experienced members of LCPR, as other speakers have this morning, of your pension principles. The principle of maintaining a retirement benefit that was adequate at the time of retirement comes to mind. Currently, that is not happening, and your own COLA report has been said, says so. The sad fact is that retired public educators are not keeping up with inflation in housing, health, fuel, food, in life's necessities. Yet they are still spending on Main Street in communities in your districts throughout the state. We don't leave Minnesota. They haven't filled your inboxes with emails, but they are trusting you to keep the pension promise, since there are funds in the state's coffers. Over the past decade, retirees have accepted every reform bill that promised to solve pension funding shortfalls, wise or not in retrospect. They even accepted multiple years of receiving no COLA increase at all to our pensions, and those losses we will never get back, ever. And I hear from our retirees over and over that our 1% COLA didn't even come close to covering the increased costs of their health insurance or meds. 40 or 50 bucks didn't go very far. What about those large increases in Social Security COLAs the last 2 years, you ask? Well, over 50%, that's half of our Minneapolis retirees, received either greatly reduced or no COLA increases at all because of the restrictions under Social Security. Those of us who were teaching prior to 1978 in Minneapolis and St. Paul were in old basic plans. We are penalized heavily by a 1985 law that reduces what we earned in Social Security benefits.
Ms. Sundin, if you could wrap up your testimony, please.
Thank you. Even though we were contributed to Social Security in other employment. And my colleagues who are married are prevented from receiving any spousal benefit at all. Therefore, in conclusion, the 4,300 Twin Cities educators in that category are part of a statewide group of 36,000 public employees so penalized who have no Social Security. I close by reminding you that we are a profession that's still 75% women, who are large percentage single heads of household. If our pensions are not adequate, we have no one to fall back on, no one to move into. We need to live longer. Once upon a time, we lived longer than the rest of you. COVID has kind of wiped that out. Now is the opportune time to keep those pension promises to retired educators who trust that you will fulfill your promise to them. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Sundin, and thank you to all who testified today. Members, I will now turn to questions and discussion. I know that many of our plans have been in front, all of our plans have been in front of us to present before. Many of the questions we've had in the past have already been answered. If you have something specific to their proposal, please feel free to raise your hand and ask them at this time and identify which plan you are asking it for. Any questions? Representative O'Driscoll and then Representative Doe.
Madam Chair, I have a series of questions for the testifiers from the plans. If we'd start back with Ms. Leonard from MSRS, please.
Sure, and if we could maybe just have all of our directors go up there, and that way we can just, pull chairs up and we
Thank
can
you.
save us some time. And I am going to limit this until 9:45 because I'd like to make sure we get through that last bill and get you all out of here by 10 o'clock. So if we could be succinct in our questions and our responses.
Madam Chair, to Ms. Leonard, on page 5 of your slide deck of items, you talk about reducing the employee contribution to 5.5% from 6%. Question I have for you is, can you remind the commission, what's the highest rate that a COLA can be under the current confines of the law for MSRS? Is it 1.5 or is it 2? I don't recall.
Ms. Leonard.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, the maximum is 1.5% for COLAs for retirees currently. In the 2018 bill, it was 1% for 5 years. That ends in 2024 and will go back up to 1.5%.
Madam Chair, to Ms. Leonard, is there any contemplation of wanting to have a higher than 1.5% COLA, where maybe keeping the employee contribution at that level to be able to garner that higher rate of COLA?
Ms. Leonard.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, I think that's a possibility. If you look at page 9, for the general plan to have a, sorry, not page 9. In the reference section, the first page, which is page 12, for the general plan to have a 0.5% compounded increase, so going up to 2%, it costs 1.62% of pay. So while it sounds like a small COLA increase, the cost of it is quite a bit more than a shift in contributions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and then I'd also like to go to page 7, if I could, of the same handout, State Patrol plan suggestions, and option A, increase fixed post-retirement benefits to 1.25% beginning in 2024. We heard testifier after testifier from groups talking about the fact that certain individuals do not receive Social Security. While it's difficult for everyone, I think it's twice as difficult, and this is even with PRA Police and Fire that Mr. Anderson's working with. They also do not receive Social Security. Is there, talking about being fair and equitable to retirees, does it make sense to try to increase that COLA, since none of these folks would be eligible through their employment to receive any of the Social Security increases that many testifiers talked about as well, versus leaving them at the 1% or 1.2 or 1.0%?
Ms. Leonard.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, so the State Patrol suggestion, option A, is to increase the COLA for State Patrol plan members to 1.25% fixed. So they would, if this were part of the package, they would get 1.25% fixed going forward. To go up to 1.5%, it would be double that cost.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I just want folks to understand that some of the plans that we have still do not have Social Security as an option. So you have one source that you're drawing your retirement from, where some have two sources, Social Security and their state pension. And the Social Security does have a different type of increase. And Mr. Anderson, I suspect that you would testify pretty much to the same, that Robbie Helms made you a state representative. I am sorry for that, Ms. Leonard, that Director Leonard had. So, Mr. Stoffel, I have a question for you as well. On your handout that's entitled Bill Summary, and it looks like this. Bullet point number 1, 2, 3, 4 on your list talks about adds a new benefit for unreduced annual retirement at age 60 or older for those who have 30 years of service, and that's kind of the Education Minnesota / TRA proposal. Question I have for you is this, is what happens, and I'm happy to have all of you in my office to kind of talk about this at further length, but I wanted the commission to kind of get a thought on this. So at age 60 to 62, there's a less benefit reduction than someone who would have waited to retire at 62 or draw benefits than they would have at 60. And the same thing from 62 to 66, the current retirement age. Do you know what that difference between waiting from 60 to 62 to receive your benefits would be?
Mr. Stoffel?
Percentage-wise in annual benefit? Is it 5%? Is it 3%? Is it 9%? Is it, what's the penalty?
Yeah, I can tell you the penalty amounts.
Sure.
Madam Chair and
Mr.
Representative
Stoffel.
O'Driscoll. Well, for someone who has achieved 62 and 30, there's less of a penalty. It's 6% a year. If you haven't achieved 62 and 30, then it's either, and I forget exactly where the break is, but it's either 7% or 4%. It's a tiered reduction. I can get you the details. I'm just not recalling it exactly at the top
Last
of my head.
question.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I figured we might be getting into some of these. I just wanted to get these items out for consideration for the commission. And I would like to visit with you a little bit deeper on that, Mr. Stoffel. I'd like to learn where the different inflection points are as we're looking at options here.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Driscoll. And I would encourage all members to meet with the plans. I've met with all of them a couple of times to go over the details of it, because I have a lot of questions when it comes to the financials. And so, that would be a great idea for the plans to actually, reach out to the members and meet with them. And Representative, I know I did have you on the list, but I'm going to move on, if that is okay. If maybe questions you have, you can maybe work directly with the plans on. I did just want to say quickly, and Mr. Stoffel, you don't need a long answer for this, but when you came in to see me, I did ask you, this is the same proposal that you brought in, and I did ask you that if there was only one-time money, what would that look like? And I don't see that there was any adjustment to, if there was only one-time money, what would your recommendation be? So I'm wondering if maybe you did think of that and you have it, but you didn't present it, and then maybe you and I could just talk offline on that piece of it. But I did not see it reflected in that proposal today. Mr. Stoffel.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, is the question about one-time money?
That if we only had, because a lot of this is ongoing in your proposal, and if we only had one-time money, what would that look like? I know you had the COLA listed on here, but it's, and the percentages, and the changing in retirement, but I just wanted to find out, like, if you only had, like Ms. Leonard provided, we looked, that was part of their assumption if there was only one-time money. And so I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that in yours, or is it just the COLA would be the one-time, if you could, that's all you had?
Madam Chair, yes. The one-time money in the TRA proposal would be for the 2.5% compounded COLA, the $316 million. There were all kinds of other ideas that we've considered over the last 7 months. And this is what the TRA board is supporting.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. And then I just wanted to say quickly for everyone today, I know that there's a lot of conversations around Social Security, and I wasn't here when that decision was made. All of you were not here. There are teachers who participate now and members who participate now, and the plans did not get to choose this. But I just want to provide a little bit of background that in the mid, probably 1950s or 60s, I don't have the exact date, but plans did decide that they weren't going to pay into Social Security, which is why they don't get Social Security benefits. And the reason for doing that back then was that they would get larger benefits out of their plan. So I know we have the conversation on Social Security, and I say this not in the context of what is right or wrong or good or bad. It is just a statement of decisions that were made. And I don't want there to be a misperception that somehow they just don't get Social Security. It's that decisions were made, and we all didn't make those decisions, but we're here now addressing this issue, and I wanted the members to make sure that they were aware of that as well, how we got to this place where some individuals do not have Social Security and some do. With that, I'm going to move us on to, we'll excuse our directors. And I see that one of our, did not leave me? Okay. So if Representative Wolgamott and Senator Frentz can make their way up to the testifiers table, our next item of business is House File 2022, Senate File 1938. And before we hear the bill and the testifiers, I would let our nonpartisan staff, Ms. Linczewski, describe the bill a little bit for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will go very quickly through this, starting with Article 1. It adds a new benefit, which is a full unreduced normal retirement benefit at age 62 rather than age 66, or with 35 years of service. Article 2 amends the statutes to restore augmentation. As a reminder for many of you who may not recall what that is a set increase in the pension benefit of a member who has left public employment, but left at a time when they were not eligible for early retirement or any other retirement. So they would then receive a 2% increase on that benefit. Article 3, what's that?
2% a year.
2% per year. Yes, Senator Pappas, that's correct. Article 3 grants all employees of a school district, so these are people who are in MSRS, para, TRA, St. Paul teachers, double credit. So for every 1 month of service during the pandemic, they would receive 2 months of service. Article 4 changes the COLA for both TRA and St. Paul teachers to tie it to Social Security with a minimum of 1% and a maximum of 3%. And finally, Article 5 provides funding by way of pension adjustment revenue and an appropriation. Those are all left blank. I do have some dollar amounts if anybody is interested. The change in the normal retirement age to 62 or 35 years of service was estimated at $3 billion one time. Double service credit for service during the pandemic, $2 billion. COLA tied to Social Security COLA with a minimum of 1% and maximum of 3%, that's $1.5 billion. And the restoration of augmentation, $747 million.
Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. And Representative Wolgamott and Senator Frentz, would you like to offer introduction to the bill?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the commission, for the opportunity to present House File 2222. I am honored to be here with Senator Frentz to present this legislation because Minnesota's school staffing shortages is at a crisis level. Educators are leaving the profession in droves, and more college students are opting for different careers, causing school districts to scramble to hire and keep teachers and other school staff. Madam Chair, that's why we're bringing this bill forward. We need a competitive compensation packages that attract the best educators to the profession and keep them in our schools. That includes offering sustainable pensions that recognize and reward educators' hard work on behalf of our students. And Madam Chair, there are two sections of the bill in particular that I would like to highlight for you and members of the commission, and a little background on why these are important provisions to me. For the past 10 years, I have had the privilege of coaching high school football at Sauk Rapids Rice High School. And I've been honored to work with the coaches that I coach with are just extremely dedicated, hardworking, passionate educators who go above and beyond to make sure that their students succeed both in the classroom and out of the classroom and make sure that they are set up for success in their lives. And, you know, Madam Chair, after games, sometimes we like to go out and celebrate a victory and have some dinner. And something I've been hearing about from my coaching buddies for years is why is Minnesota have such a high normal retirement age, especially compared to other states, Madam Chair. So our normal retirement age is currently 66. That's the second highest of any of the states. If we look at our neighbors, Iowa is 62, Wisconsin 65, North Dakota 65, South Dakota 65. Why are we so uncompetitive with the states around us? By lowering the normal retirement age to 62, it will help us retain educators in the profession and make sure that they are getting the benefits they deserve for our students, for what they do for our students. The second section I would like to highlight, Madam Chair, is Section 3, which doubles the service credit for the work that our educators did during the pandemic. I saw not only from my buddies that I coach football with, but also from the teachers of my two daughters who are in our public schools, what our educators had to go through during the pandemic, the challenges they faced, the struggles that they overcame, the above and beyond work that would have previously been unimaginable that they did to support our students through one of the darkest times in our state's history absolutely warrants doubling their service credit for those years during the pandemic. So In closing, Madam Chair, I really believe that our pensions packages here for our teachers should serve as incentives to our teachers and not be deterrents to have them leave the profession. Pensions are one of the only tools that we have in the public sector to compete with the private sector. I want the teachers in my daughter's schools to be the best and the brightest Minnesotans attracted to that profession. That's why I urge your full consideration for these provisions and fight to get as big of a target as we can get for this commission so that we can include as much of House File 2222 in our final package. Thank you, Madam Chair, and with that, I'm very honored to turn it over to my Senate author, who's a champion for teachers, Senator Nick Frentz.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. Needless to say, I echo Representative Wolgamott's sentiments on teachers. Each of us has somewhere around 1,100 teachers in their district, and each of those teachers is as dedicated a public servant as any firefighter, any police officer, any state employee at Minnesota State or St. Cloud. And I think we should look at this and say, what's the state of the teaching profession right now? It's in crisis. I have to agree that I'm surprised how much I've heard the last few years from my friends that are teachers about the pensions, about the reasons that they think it's important, and about the changes made in 2018, which I was a part of, Madam Chair, and why this bill, Senate File 1938, is a path to do much, much better. My colleagues already called attention to some of the provisions. I think the double service credit allows us to say what happened during COVID. It was a major handful for our teachers, and I am impressed and thankful for the strength that they showed, not just from the public health standpoint of the once every 100-year pandemic, but from some of the external forces, including parents, school board meetings, and some of the pressures of online learning. We owe it to our teachers to put this type of legislation forward with an exclamation point. If we're sharing our personal stories, my parents were both public school teachers when I was a kid. I was very proud of that. That was the name of the game in our house, education. I'm the very proud older brother of my sister Sonia and my brother Alex, both outstanding educators to this day in the great states of Colorado and Ohio. Please do not let them know that I said that, as the sibling rivalry in the Frentz family is legendary and quite intense. But what I'm asking all of you to consider is that if we make these changes, that we'll be making a statement to our education system. And public education has long been a driving force in the success not only of our students as citizens, but the economy. We put out great students. That drives Minnesota's success, and we should keep doing that. I think Representative Wolgamott covered most of the highlights of the bill. I know it has a big price tag, but I just close by pointing out that we have a country here where 19 states require the ACT tests. 19 states essentially say to their students, you're going to take the ACT. Madam Chair, do you know where Minnesota ranks amongst those states in score? Number 1. And I ask you members, what's the value of that? What is the value of having our students succeed? And the corollary, what's the cost of having them not get the greatest possible educators? Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, members.
Thank you, Senator Frentz and Representative Wolgamott. We will now move over to your testifiers. I have listed Sheila Fitzgerald, retired high school social studies teacher. If you are here, please make your way to the testifiers table.
Madam Chair, you may know that I am not Sheila Fitzgerald. My name is Caitlin Snyder with Education Minnesota. Due to a miscommunication on my part, she is not able to join us today. So if it's appropriate, I would like to read her statement to you.
Thank you so much. And if you could limit the testimony to 2 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated.
Great. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Sheila Frances Fitzgerald. I am proud of my terrific educational genetic heritage. My World War II veteran dad, mom, and my sister were all teachers. I was named after my mom's most influential teacher at Edgewood College, Sister Jane Francis. My niece Claire is currently student teaching in Central Wisconsin. Today I will speak as a spouse, favorite auntie, and daughter of educators. After 33 years of teaching, I benefited from the Rule of 90 and retired in June 2020. Between COVID and a malignant biopsy of an unknown primary cancer discovered on my first day of retirement, I was relieved to be rewarded for my decades of teaching service. Unfortunately, my spouse and her colleagues who began after 1990 do not qualify for the same benefit. Despite facing monumental and unprecedented challenges teaching in a global pandemic, current educators face working into their mid-60s. Minnesota educators work in far more challenging environments than even 5 years ago, and with zero retirement statewide incentive or reward. As a favorite auntie, I want my talented Wisconsin niece to teach in Minnesota. I have to admit the Wisconsin retirement incentive of 85 is not helping in my efforts. Lastly, when I look at the demographic gender breakdown of educators, it's hard not to see this as an issue of equity. My dad received years of service credit for his time in the U.S. Navy. Women service members were not even eligible for the GI Bill. Meanwhile, my mom and a whole lot of her female colleagues lost years of service by staying home to take care of their children. For decades, Minnesota was a desired destination for educators. The district had hundreds of applicants for jobs. University education programs were filled with future educators in training, no longer. Policymakers must recognize these new realities and act. Act to remedy the retirement disparities with neighboring states. Act to attract people willing to serve their neighbors in an increasingly essential profession. Act to allow Minnesota to build on its well-earned reputation as a state of innovation and high-quality education. Act boldly with courage and foresight. Minnesota must lead, not follow. Please support the 62 or 35 bill as a step to creating a retirement incentive worthy of Minnesota's phenomenal educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder, for reading the statement. Appreciate it. If Deb Muntor is available, please come up to the testifiers table, identify yourself for the record, and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Representative Herr, and Pension Committee members. My name is Deborah Munter. I'm an Education Minnesota member and a fifth grade teacher with 33 years of experience in Minnesota's public schools. I grew up in Wisconsin, chose to attend college in Minnesota, and earned my teaching license in this great state. Currently, I'm being penalized for choosing to teach in Minnesota with Tier 2 status. I need to work a decade longer than I would have worked if I had stayed in Wisconsin. I'm in support of the 62 or 35 bill currently in legislation. Certain individuals, even those hired the same year as I, can retire with the rule of 90, while I must wait 10 more years and retire with a rule of 108. I earned my education degree in May 1989 and missed the arbitrary cutoff date of July 1st, 1989. None of us signed on for COVID or to teach through a pandemic. It was a nightmare for all, and for me, it meant working extremely long days, most nights, and every weekend trying to make sure my students felt supported, valued, inspired, and engaged in their learning. I even met with students online in one room while caring for my mom, who was dying of cancer, in another. The COVID credit in the current 62 or 35 bill would demonstrate a true appreciation for the dedication Minnesota's teachers have shown for their students. We desperately need to attract and retain quality educators so we're competitive with neighboring states. It's time to show us the gratitude we deserve and motivate new educators with a strong pension plan that includes the language and changes in the 62 or 35 bill currently in the House and Senate. In conclusion, thank you for allowing me to share my testimony and to be heard. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Munter. And I will turn this over to member discussion. If you have questions, please raise your hand and I will, yes, Senator Seeberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out, in reviewing the list of testifiers here in connection with these bills, I note that Cheryl B. Lancette from ESCO High School submitted written testimony in support of this bill. Ms. Lancette and I attended college together. We graduated together. I've seen her work over the course of her career. She works hard, and if she says that these bills are worth supporting, they're worth supporting. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Seeberger. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate all the testimony that was presented here today and also submitted. There is a lot of unfairness with how TRA currently operates, and one of the biggest metrics that I look at is how much, for every dollar that a teacher is putting in to our pension fund, about 37 cents of that dollar is going to pay for unfunded liabilities in the past, and only about 63 cents on every dollar is going to pay for that member's benefit. And the same is true on the employer side. And so I just really want to make sure with any of these proposals that we're not creating more unfairness going forward. And so my question, Madam Chair, is, I know we are trying to figure out what our target is and have blank appropriations in the bill currently, but I just wanted to ask if the bill authors are committed to making sure that this proposal is fully funded so that we're not actually increasing that percent of teachers' compensation that goes to, paying for their benefits versus paying for unfunded liabilities in the past.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Of course, I'm committed to fully funding the bill, but I'm even more committed to seeing our teacher crisis addressed by benefits. And I would say my top priority is to address the situation with teachers. Would be glad to find that we have a target that can accommodate some of these priorities.
Thank you, Senator Frentz. Follow-up, Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you. I just wanted to, one thing that I appreciate about this bill is that it doesn't change the amortization date. And I think that's really important too, that we don't push off paying for the benefits or push off getting these plans caught up to their target date. So that's a feature of this bill that I do appreciate.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. And so Senator Frentz and Representative Wolgamott, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, thank you again, Madam Chair and members of the commission and Senator Frentz for being a good partner in these efforts. I just want to close by saying that I know that these proposals are expensive, but Minnesota's teacher crisis is going to be an expensive one to fix. And I cannot think of a better investment in our state's dollars than investing in our educators who are working so hard to invest in the next generation of Minnesotans. Thank you for your consideration, Madam Chair and members.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. Thanks, members of the public. The teachers are watching us. I would just say two quick thoughts for you, Madam Chair. First of all, we hear more about pensions in the teacher crisis than any of the other issues. Teachers have a lot of issues, as do all of us at work, but this is the number one thing we're hearing about. And as our question morphs into targets and how much we're spending, I would just say, as we often do in pensions, don't just ask what it costs, ask what it pays. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I move to lay this House File 2223 or Senate File 1938 over for future consideration. Thank you, Representative Wolgamott and Senator Frentz. This concludes our business for today, members. Due to observance of Sovereignty Day next Monday, we will not have our commission hearing at the normal time next week. Members and public, please keep an eye on our emails for announcement of our next commission hearing. We plan to hear numerous bills and presentations on issues relating to firefighter pension plans. So seeing no further business in front of us, this meeting is adjourned.